Hello, thank you for listening to 3 Legacies Recovery Recordings. If you enjoy our program, please be sure to like and subscribe to the channel, and don't forget to share with a friend. We're also self-supporting, so feel free to contribute to the channel through Venmo at Recovery Recordings 615. Please note that the views expressed on this podcast are solely our individual views and do not represent any official stance of any 12-step program. We are not affiliated with any specific recovery organization, and this content should not be considered as professional advice for alcoholism or addiction.
Hello everyone, welcome to 3 Legacies Recovery Recordings. I'm your host Paul, I'm definitely an alcoholic. Today's date is February 12th, 2025, and this is episode 12. This is the 12th episode. We have also, again, I'm always wanting to give feedback to the listeners. I appreciate all the comments, all the support we've gotten. Our email address is recoveryrecordings615@yahoo.com. And feel free to send any talks that y'all have or any suggestions y'all have on any podcast episodes or any of that stuff. And it's greatly appreciated. Today's guest, we have the special, this is our second time meeting up. This is Katie P. from Austin, Texas. How you doing, Katie?
I'm doing really well. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much. I'm super excited about the night. For the listeners, we're going to be doing step 3, and what we're calling this is Trudging the Road of Happy Destiny, a journey through the big book with Katie P. And I'm super excited, Katie, because if not my favorite third step talk, definitely top 3 favorite third step talks of yours.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. It developed into something that was really fairly easy to teach and easy to understand, which I think is the key to making recovery easy. Yeah. You know, it's hard work, but it's easy you got to learn it.
Sure. It's funny because I can listen to them over the same talk that you do over and over again, and every time I hear it, depending on what I'm going through, what I've recently been through, I relate to it in a completely different experience. You know.
Oh well, that's really great to hear. Thanks.
Yeah, it's so cool. Yeah. I know I've had a lot of people that I know personally, and a lot of different comments and different people that have just told me how much they appreciate the episode we did last week. And for the listeners, we are doing. I think we're gonna do tonight step 3, and then we're taking the next 2 weeks off, and then we'll come back and do step 4, and I'll give those dates before we get off the episode. And so, what do you got going on this weekend, Katie?
Well, Chad and I are it's my first real weekend back to do a big book weekend, and without Charlie. So Chad said he would do it with me, and the person putting it on was just thrilled about that. So we're going to Columbus, Georgia.
Nice.
And Charlie and I had kicked that one off originally. Gosh, I guess it was 12 years ago, may have been a little less. And this guy that put it on is literally on fire. I think he had 6 months when he asked me. He had been at one that Charlie and I had done. He asked me if we do one, and so I put him in the books, you know. And you don't really think much of it. You don't think to ask somebody their sobriety date, make sure they stay sober. You know, we've blocked out a weekend to go, and when we finally get there to go, I said to Todd, so Todd, how long you been sober? And he was like, 18 months. And I go, oh my God, how much time did you have when you asked me? I mean, we laughed and laughed and laughed, and this guy is on fire. He has had a big book weekend every year. Wow. I think he's coming up. He's up on 6 years now. And I mean, it's just incredible. And he's a remarkable soldier in the rooms of AA. I just love him to death. And I'm really looking forward to seeing him.
Wow, that's awesome. And speaking of sobriety dates, if I'm not correct, it's October 28th, 1984. Is that yours?
Correct. Yes.
That's awesome. You just celebrated
Halloween weekend. It was quite a Halloween 40 years ago.
That's funny. Oh man, that's awesome. Yeah. So this is your first one back, first big book weekend without Charlie, huh? Since he's been.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And Chad is, you know, I couldn't ask for a better partner to do it with. You know, Chad is such part of the family, and you have a dance, and I mean, it really is like a physical dance, and you got to be able to know each other's rhythm and how, that you're sharing kind of the same type of a message. I mean, you don't have to be, but
Yeah.
I think for me, it's a little bit more comfortable, and so it should be interesting. It's going to be a lot of fun. We got lots of folks coming in. It's only 100 people.
Wow.
And his venue is small, and he said 60% of the people are coming from out of town. I hope the locals didn't realize that it would fill up like that, and they kind of got, gypped out of it. But, you just sometimes you put those things off before, and you go, oh, I'm going to sign up. And then you find out there's no space. And that's a bummer. It's like, okay, you don't usually have that happen once in your life. And then you go, oh, I'm not letting that happen again. But it should be a blast. Chad and I are really looking forward to it. And I can't wait to see how it, just rolls out.
Yeah, that sounds like a fun weekend. So I've noticed that I've seen your name pop up on a lot of. So you're actually starting to roll back with the talks again, huh? So after a couple of years break, huh?
Yeah, I thought I'd probably go back in 2026, and then apparently, I swear to God, I think I was in a blackout when I said yes to all these people, because next thing you know, I look at 2025 and I go, holy smokes, I have way more talks than I anticipated. And, it's interesting because, Charlie and I got a pup during COVID. And so now I got to, make sure the pup's taken care of, and I got to get all my ducks in a row. And it's funny. I mean, God always makes it work out smoothly. I choose how much stress I want to put on myself, but it's, the thing is I'm going to see a lot of old friends, and that's a lot of the reason I said yes. So I'm looking forward to seeing Todd. I'm looking forward to seeing Sheldon shortly, and just lots of good folks. So
nice.
It'll be a nice re-entry back into doing something that we all love. That's going to conferences.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'd seen Sheldon had posted. Sheldon from Las Vegas. That who you're talking about?
Yes.
Yeah, I'd seen he had posted a thing on one of the recovery websites that you were going to be speaking. That was cool.
He gave me free reign. He said, Katie, you have X amount of hours to speak on anything you want. It was like, oh, I am in. Yeah, I get to pick every one of my favorite things I like to talk about. Let's do it.
Nice.
And I know Charlie would have loved it. And I know exactly where Charlie would have gone with it. So I just thought it was such a cool idea, is to give someone that's got some time, free reign on what they want, what steps they want to do, what they want to share. And it's just going to be wonderful.
Yeah, that's great. That's what we're doing here too. That's the cool part about this.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's great.
Absolutely. I last week, I really enjoyed that. I was apprehensive. I thought, I don't know how to have a conversation and talk about the steps when we're going to try to cover a whole step.
Yeah.
I can talk all day long about AA and steps and, listen to inventory and all that, but I don't know why I had a roadblock here, and I ended up having a blast last weekend.
Yeah, me too.
Last week, it was really fun. It was smooth, and and I'm not the generation that even really listens to podcasts. My son, who's 36, he loves them, but I'm like, what is a podcast? What do you do on a podcast? But now I see.
Yeah.
Firsthand experience.
Yeah, it's awesome. Yeah, it's funny because I don't even listen to many podcasts, to be honest with you. It's funny.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
This whole thing just kind of like happened. It's weird. Like 2 or 3 months ago, a couple people had came up to me and was like, "Man, you should start a podcast." And I was like, "Nah, I don't got time for a podcast," and then one thing led to the next, and it's like, wow, I'm starting a podcast. And here we are. Yeah.
Wow. Well, see, now there's the hand of God working in your life. I mean,
I know.
The people would say you should do a podcast. I can't imagine that somebody would come and ask me to start a podcast. So that your gift is definitely in there.
It's crazy because, like, if I listen to some of my, the internal dialogue I've had over the last couple months that tells myself I'm completely inadequate to do this, then I would not be sitting here doing this. You get what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm very familiar with the internal dialogue.
Yeah. Something else is guiding me through all this, thank God. And it's been cool so far. So, yeah.
Oh, I'm so glad to hear that, Paul. That's great.
Yeah, cool. Well, all right. I guess we'll get rolling with step 3. And
okay. Well, it's one of the things that about step 3, when Charlie and I started waking up to it, a lot of this is from my sponsor, Marty Ruby. And she, one of the things is, it was so funny in the middle of a step workshop Charlie and I were doing, he put his hand over the mic and he leaned over and he goes, "Where did we get all this step 3 stuff?" And he said, "Was it Mark?" And I said, "No, ding dong, it was Marty." I said, "Marty did the 3rd step and introduced it to us." And because, you know, it's funny when you're waking up spiritually, it's hard to connect the dots to who said what. You certainly know you're being propelled forward, but you don't necessarily know exactly what it was that someone said. And that's the beauty of it, if you ask me. And Marty was the one who woke us up to this. And Charlie, this was one of Charlie's favorite lines about chapter 5, how it works. He used to say it's the most read, least listened to thing, you know, is how it works. I mean, we all sit through a meeting and you hear the cadence of it and you know when they're going to say this and you know when they're going to say this. But there is so much meat in that one page. Wow. If you dissected it, it's remarkable. And there's a line in there that we use that is half measures availed us nothing. And there was a conference in Hilton Head, and Charlie was speaking at it. When I got there, the woman said, "I am so sorry. I didn't even realize you'd be coming." And I said, "Well, you know, I mean, I'm just a guest here." And she goes, "Well, you want to do anything?" And the name of the conference was Half Measures. And I said, "Oh, I'd love to do a talk on half measures." And I mean, I was even blown away. It was one, you know, every once in a while you impress yourself. And I thought, wow, I mean, I connected the book in a way that I was so taken back by how much meat is on the bone in the book of warnings of half measures. Because I mean, you can connect it up to, you know, what happens when we don't do what we're supposed to do. And it was just great. It was one of those impromptu things. And once again, I love those because you just, you know, let it roll. Yeah. But, you know, the 3rd step, and some people, I think Bill called it emotional sobriety, which meant what happens after we realize it's not about the drink, right? I thought stopping drinking was the finish line, that the rest is, you know, we do all kinds of other things to improve our well-being. But as long as we don't drink, we're doing what we're supposed to be doing in AA. And nobody told me that. That is just what I thought. A lot of stuff in AA is just thought of. You know, nobody came up and said, "Katie, it's all about just not drinking." They didn't. I came up with all of these thoughts all on my own. So I've always been a big fan of not blaming anybody for anything because nobody did anything to me. The book was always there. I could have picked it up. I could have had somebody teach it to me, but it just never occurred to me. So I like to call the 3rd step the second surrender. And the first surrender, of course, is to alcohol. I don't really think Bill wanted me to wait 17 years before I woke up to the second surrender, but so be it. You know, you wake up when you wake up. And when back in the 80s, what we did was, you know, you ask somebody, "So you think you're alcoholic?" And I wasn't even explained what it meant to be alcoholic, but I was sure I was one. And so go figure on that. And that was sufficient for me. That's not sufficient for a lot of people, but for me, it was sufficient. And I think it's because I was one of the lucky ones. I just fell in love with the fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous. And apparently that is a very rare number of people. Charlie and I have asked at many conferences how many people on day one loved AA, and out of a room of 300, maybe 8 raised their hand. Wow. So, I mean, it's really impressive. But I absolutely fell in love with it. So you ask them if you're alcoholic. I'm sure I must be. I got a 5-year-old. I'm doing stuff that I can't believe, and I can't stop drinking. So that's what I said. And then they said, "How do you feel on the second step?" And I said, "I got no problem. I'd probably lean towards Christianity, but I know there's a God, so we'll leave it at that." And then they said, "Well, let's get on our knees and do the 3rd step prayer." And that was very commonplace. And a lot is missed when you do it that way. And so, you know, you miss the whole body of work of 60, 61, 62, all the way halfway down 63. There's so much going on there that we just missed. And, you know, I like to say, and I steal this from Kip Collins, it's easier to get an alcoholic to stop drinking than it is to get one of us to quit playing God. Because I mean, that's still a tough challenge for us. You know, alcohol was the solution, not the problem. Yeah. You know, alcohol is the only thing that treated the pain of living a life based on self-will. Amen. See, in my DNA, I don't think too much of myself or too little of myself. All I think about is myself. And that's where the problem is. It's not. That's why selfish and self-centeredness gets so misunderstood. We are self-consumed. How's this going to affect me? What's the weather going to do to me? What's this traffic going to do to me? If he walks over here and says that, what am I going to do? Everything is just filtered through that filter of self. And it's interesting because, and this is something I've picked up. Right, wrong, good, bad, I don't really know, but it's something that I saw in the book, and I found it interesting because on page 60 in italics, it says we were at step 3. And over on page 63, when we're getting ready to do the prayer, it says we are now at step 3, but it's not italicized. So I think 60 is the beginning of the third step explanation, and 63 is the what do you call it when you're I have a word and it's going to come out wrong. When you're reminded of the affirmation. The prayer is the affirmation of what we just heard. And that's what I think is so important to understand. So you got to understand the body of it. And then when they say on page 63, we were now at step 3, we're just reiterating we are affirming what we just understood. And it's kind of interesting because, I remember the first time I saw it, once again, Charlie leaned over and he goes, say that again. What are you saying about the And I always love that. My guy, oh my God, you never knew where he was. He's usually over there thinking about potato chips or something. I'm like, okay, let's go back to this. So it says, and then it says, which is that we decided to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood it. Now, this is really something because our will is our thoughts and our lives are our actions. So they're already right out of the gate telling us we need to turn our thoughts and our actions over to God. Our life is always going to be full of action, and our will is always going to be full of thought. So it's a really simple explanation to a very challenging action to take. I mean, all of a sudden now I got to keep an eye on my thoughts. I mean, I can keep an eye on my thoughts when I'm angry. I mean, I'm angry. I'm mad at them. I am this. I am that. I am this. But when I'm afraid, I don't see it that often. I don't see fear as much as I see resentment. That's just for me. Some people see it the opposite.
Same here.
Yeah, it's whatever. I take a step forward. So when I'm afraid, I'm not seeing it as fear. I'm seeing it as anger. And then there's always a cause and effect, right? And this cause and effect, Bill said, I ruthlessly faced my sins and became willing to have my newfound friend take them away root and branch.
Nice.
So when it's talking about root and branch, it is cause and effect. So if I do this, this is what's going to happen. And somehow the delusional mind of alcoholism gets me to be convinced that the cause and effect will be different. And then once I do it, even best sponsorships telling you this may not be the best plan. I always like to sponsor with, I'm not going to tell you what you should do because I'm not going to rob you of a good experience or a bad experience. You have to have the experience. I don't want to manage your life. So if you want to go to that party, I'm going to tell you the pros and cons, but do what you want. Either don't go or go. So that's kind of an interesting way to look at cause and effect. And if my life is a demonstration of my inward condition, right? If somebody is full of fear, they're just a fretter through everything. I mean, they fret at the red light. They fret at the grocery store line. They're just fretters. And that's not much of my makeup. I am more the one that's going to get to the front of the line. I'm going to get through the grocery store quickly. I'm going to get what I need, get out of my way. But I think it's really important to understand that my life is a demonstration of my inward condition. So and then this is all going to lead into spiritual laws. And that's what I love is spiritual laws. Once I woke up to spiritual laws, I had no idea that there was such a thing called a spiritual law. And, the law of substitution, the law of subconscious activity, the law of being. There's just so many laws, and they're written for all different types of spirituality. You have Christian, Buddhism, Hinduism, Judaism. They're written for all of them. So whatever is your choice of being, there's spiritual laws for all of that. And I find it I find it fascinating. It really opens a whole different dimension if you're open to it. If you really immediately put the kibosh on it, well, so be it. Yeah, you'll miss a huge chunk of spiritual recovery. And since that is everything, right? This is we're a one-trick pony, right? Mm-hmm. We have power, we have identification and power. Mm. That's it. So you want to buck the concept of power? Best of luck to you, man. I mean, I sort of, Charlie used to say, we want to put less God in AA because we're afraid we're going to scare off the new guy. You don't think the not drinking is going to scare the new guy off? I think they're going to pay a lot more attention to that not drinking stuff,
That's so funny.
But it's so true. He had such good one-liners. Oh my God, I just loved him. But it's so true because we just have to have an open mind. That's it. Have an open mind to learn something different, to open your mind to something might be different than what my old ideas are. Because remember, these old ideas, they happen throughout my entire life. They're not just from my childhood. Amen. They're from 2 weeks ago, sure. And these old ideas are not always bad, right? That's the other thing. I think the word old makes people think bad. It's kind of like conference-approved literature means that everything else is not okay. And conference-approved literature just means AA printed it. Yeah. It's from their print shop. But it doesn't mean that the other literature is bad. Sure. And so I think sometimes we hear a one phrase and we sum it up. I know I do. So we sum it up and then we make a judgment, and by golly, it's in my mind for the rest of my life like that, and I'm not budging. But then it says, just what do we do? What do we mean? And by that, just what do we do? So if it's saying that we have to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God, then what do we mean? And what do we do? Well, the book's getting ready to spend the next 2 pages explaining what do we mean. And then it switches to what do we do. So we're getting ready to break down the what do we mean. And on page 61, it's got a requirement. And not that this kind of reminds me of the old doorknob thing, that some people still keep that thing alive as a joke, that your God can be the doorknob if you want it, right? Although it says a power greater than yourself, I think I'm a little more powerful than a doorknob. But this is also the word suggest tends to come, people say, well, the steps are suggested. Well, suggest means to enter into the mind. So if it means to enter into the mind, we're suggesting this approach. What do you think? Not, no, thank you. I'd prefer to take the mustard, not the mayonnaise. So I think sometimes we get hung up on words. So on page 61, the first thing is the first requirement. So there is actually a requirement, is that we be convinced that any life run on self-will can hardly be a success. Mark used to say, turn statements into questions. I can read that and tell you today that is not accurate because I like self-will. Amen. I mean, I get a lot done with self-will. I can push my will on you. I can manipulate. I can maneuver. I can do whatever I need to do to get what I want. Now, I will tell you that most of the time I prefer to live along spiritual basis, but my mind will go to, but I could, but I'm not today. You know what I mean? And
absolutely.
I think that doesn't go away at 40 years sober. It's always trying to be more and more creative.
That makes me feel better.
And then it says, oh, well, good, because, and how much sobriety time do you have,
8
Paul?
years, it was 8 years. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I tell you, I really think the waters get rough during double digits. I have been saying that for years, and I can't tell you how many people have told me I did not believe that, and boy, oh boy, are you right. And the double digits, for me, I remember the 10 was a big deal, right? When you're 10 years old, that's a big deal. All of a sudden, you've gone out of single digits to double digits. People want to say teenage. Well, they're much more of a pain in the neck between 10 and 13 than they are at the day of 13, right? So to me, those what I call teenage years, and I mean no offense when I say that, I'm just trying to use an example of we are know-it-alls. We've already done that. I've seen that. And the gifts of sobriety tend to pull us away at those double digits between 10 and 20. And here's the other caution that I would say, because by God, I did it all. I almost drank at 17. I mean, what happens is I didn't realize first of all, I didn't realize the AA program we had to work. I did all the other counseling and codependency and the whole 9 yards, and it was extremely valuable. I don't ever want to knock that, but I was not treating my alcoholism through, 10th step watching, evening review, questioning myself, on awakening, really taking those, looking at your 24 hours, taking those corrective measures, yada, yada, yada. So I didn't even realize what the root of my problem was. Once I realized what the root of my problem was at 17 years, it took me another 4 years to wake up and come out of that. Because I'm a fighter, man. I fight all the way through until I am completely convinced that my life run on self-will can hardly be a success. And I'm telling you, that is that, because I got stuff done. I mean, I did. You tell me I can't, watch me. I'll get it done. And no matter what. And so with that kind of personality, you're having a hard time convincing yourself on that. And then it says, now this is the part that is so true. We are almost always in collision with something or somebody, even though my motives are good. So all of a sudden you're reading that and you're thinking, okay, so I'm almost always in collision with somebody or something. That's true. And then it gives me that warning, even when your motives are good.
Yeah.
I'm like, hold up. Because most of us, today I know when I'm working an angle. I know when I'm working an angle, I'm trying to get somebody to say what I want them to say. I'm trying to get somebody to do what I want them to do. I know that. But behind a kind motive, I am not seeing that. And I like to use the example of the new guy. We tell him would you be willing to open the building up and greet the folks as they come in and make the coffee and do all this? He might get a lot of service commitments, and he's doing it all. And he's just, he's a part of, he feels wanted, all those great things. And then all of a sudden, he's been doing this for quite some time. He's getting between 6 and 12 months, and he's starting to look around. He's like, hey, hold on just a second. I'm the only one doing this, and everybody else is enjoying it, and nobody's helping. Yeah. And see, that's that behind a kind motive. How sweet of you guys to trust me with this. And then the ego switches it. Instead of saying something like, hey, guys, I've been doing this a while. Can some of y'all come and help? There's 100 things we could do. But instead, we just keep that bottled up in our head till it explodes. And that kind motive, once again, I don't have a kind motive until you don't react the way I want you to.
Yeah. So,
I'm just doing something helpful, and all of a sudden you're not even grateful for it. You're nothing. You're like, okay. You're not, thank you, nothing. So I'm keeping an eye on all of this stuff. I don't even know I'm keeping an eye on it till I start to feel that churning inside of me. And I've always used these examples. I need to come up with some newer examples. Letting people in traffic and you get a wave. That seems to be obsolete in these days. I swear to God.
I hear you.
I have not seen, I saw one hand wave in about the last 8 months. And I thought, well, I'll wave at you. God dang it.
And I'm always watching for it. You know what I mean? You always watch for it, right? I do anyway.
And, exactly. And then I won't even go into holding the door for somebody. Apparently that's gotten gender specific. I'm like, I hold the door because it's common courtesy, people. It's got nothing to do with a male and female, but that's a whole nother thing. The other one is, so if all of a sudden you're walking on like the hike and bike trail and you see a plastic bottle, watch how you pick it up. You pick it up and kind of show the crowd, I'm a do-gooder. I'll throw this away. It's just a funny thing that we do. Yeah. And it's not easy to get an alcoholic to understand the selfishness and self-centeredness. It was not easy for me, so why would it be easy for them? They're not just going, oh, please tell me all about this, right? And most of the time I'm going to tell you I had good intentions. I didn't mean to hurt anybody. And then, of course, it goes into the actor running the whole show is forever trying to arrange the lights, the ballet, the scenery, and the rest of the players in his own way. That word forever is pretty powerful, right? I am forever trying to organize this stuff so that the show goes the way I want it to. And, we used to, I did the George Clooney, Julia Roberts one time, and then Charlie ran with it because he knew that I can pull off something once. But if I try to remember it and repeat it, I'm dead in the water. Dead in the water. Yeah. And he looked at me and he goes, can I take it? I'm like, go ahead. You seem to pull it off really well. But it's so true because we're just the actor in the play. Yeah. But we think we're the director. I'd like to be the actor and the director. So if you all would just follow my lead, we will get through this the way that I think is the best. And I'm not really this as much as I used to be, but I did it today though. So I guess that's an inaccurate statement. I am the sheriff of the world or the first responder. I mean, if there's chaos, I am in the middle of it. And I mean, I have it in my bones. So I'm getting ready to go somewhere. And remember, I'm having all these troubles with whatever's going on. I don't know if it's allergies in my throat or what, but we got that big deal to do this weekend. So I'm trying to respect my voice, blah, blah, blah. And I'm loading my car up, and I'm going to be taking my dog over to somebody's house. And I hear my front street is like a hike and bike trail. I mean, it is dogs, bikes, everybody. It's a beautiful road, and a lot of people walk on it. And I hear these two dogs in a very vicious fight. And I'm thinking, oh my God. And I hear women screaming. Of course, I drop everything because, I'm a first responder. It's like, I have my cape. I will fly in, I will assess the situation, and I will take care of it. So, I mean, I go running over there screaming, because, I mean, it's vicious. It's a bad dog fight. And the one woman has a smaller dog, but she's too old to do anything, to pull the dog or anything. And the other one is like this white mastiff. And I don't take a minute to go. Now, if it had been a pit bull, that scares me. And not that pit bulls are bad, but they just are scary looking dogs. Yeah. So no disrespect. If anybody hears me say that, my God, I don't want you to think I don't like pit bulls. I have family members that have beautiful ones. But this was a big white mastiff. And my dog trainer taught me that if a dog ever comes at your dog, you're supposed to just start screaming and take a step forward and just scream like you're gigantic. And I mean, I start screaming. Now remember, I'm supposed to be taking care of my voice. I got 2 days to take care of my voice. And I am screaming my brains out. And both these dogs stopped fighting. And it was ugly. And I thought, oh my God. And now I'm shaking and they're shaking. And I thought, holy shit, a dog fight will scare the crap out of you. Yeah. And when I got home, I thought, oh my God, my voice is toast. It sounds like I'm going into laryngitis. And well, isn't that just great? I had to be the first responder on that task. But at least I saved those dogs from fighting so bad. And the women were just so grateful. And I just thought, oh my God. But see, I don't, if there's a car accident, I mean, I'm screaming at Charlie to pull over. I'm over there in the middle of it. I just, all my life, I've been like that. And
that's funny.
I have thousands of stories of those. So, and they can get you in some trouble. You know what I mean? I mean, if there's injustice going on, there's a real problem there. And I mean, I'll just march right up into the middle of it. But it says, if my arrangements would only stay put, if everyone would do as I wish, right? The show would be great. Everyone, including myself, would be happy. Life would be wonderful. See, if everyone, and I'm telling you, that's so subtle in us. But we really think the best way to run a meeting is. We really think the best way to do the grocery store is. Yeah. We know the best way to do a bank teller line. I mean, if you're at all like me, I am watching everything thinking this could run just a touch better if I was orchestrating everything. And then it would be Katie-topia, which is so delusional. Maybe 3 of my ideas would work, but I guarantee 4 of them wouldn't work, Yeah. So you always got to be careful of that kind of thinking,
And like you're saying, it's like we're not even aware of that for like quite a while.
Not at all.
I often, like I said
we
last
week. We are so
week,
not aware of it.
I often, like I mentioned last week, I'm always curious on what I'm not aware of that's happening in my life, currently,
Well, and I'll tell you, as we go along, what's really cool is when you do your evening review, and I like to put pen to paper. I don't necessarily answer all the questions in the book. I answer something that's got that gist to it. But and then you really go over your thinking and really start to make that a practice. It will be very impressive what comes up because, that still quiet voice is trying to direct you to some of those thoughts that you're thinking. Yeah. But if you don't ever look back at them, then they're just white noise. But if you start really looking back at them, and when we get into 10 and 11, that will be a whole different ballgame. I mean, it's really it's a great practice. And once again, spiritual practice is so hard. It says that we alcoholics are undisciplined. God disciplines us in this very way we just laid out. And I myself will not do it all the time. I've been better in these last 10 years of my life than I ever have. But I will be honest with you, the last 3 weeks have been very, very challenging for me. And I'm realizing that when I lay down at night, I got 5 storylines going. Well, that means I haven't been doing my evening review. Wow. I mean, I can't. If you do the practice, that typically doesn't happen. But then you think you're going to just be able to fight through it, and it'll be fine the next night. And the next night, you've added 2 more resentments or 2 more fears. And yeah, it was today. It was very obvious to me that I have let this practice go too long. I don't have bonus time. I really don't. I can maybe get away with 2 days, or like when we go to do a weekend like Chad and I are going to do. Yeah. I don't necessarily do On Awakening and Evening Review, or On Awakening and Evening Review, yeah. And I can get away with it. Mm-hmm. But when I go a week and a half and I'm at home, no, I pay a hefty price. It's just a low grade fever miserable. Right. So it's just angry. I'm just kind of edgy, and everybody's bugging me.
Irritable.
Don't they realize? Oh yeah. Restless, irritable, and discontented. Yeah. And I'll have a whole other story, but I'll just leave it alone, because that one, I'm not spiritually fit enough to tell the story and not let it bother me. So we'll move right past that one, but okay. But then, it talks about him trying to make these arrangements or actually maybe sometimes quite virtuous. So here's the toolkit of self-reliance when we're in the world, right? I could be kind, considerate, patient, generous, even modest and self-sacrificing. You want my chair? Here, take that. You need a coat? Looks like you're cold. Whatever we do. Then if I don't get my way, I'm mean, egotistical, selfish, and dishonest. And that can be in a split second. If all of a sudden I'm trying to be kind and nice, and the guy on the phone takes a turn and doesn't do as I wish he would, well, then I'm really snappy. Yeah. And that can happen very easily on the phone when you're, talking to other people that are in the service world, and there's nothing against that. But those folks take a lot of heat from people. There's just, and I had to be on 3 calls this week, and the last guy I just was watching myself. I was just not nice. I was so frustrated. He kept repeating what I was saying. It's like, buddy, we got to get off that. Okay, let's move to the next sentence. I'm about to lose my mind. And I always tell myself before I do it, I'm like, Father God, please help me. This is one of your kids on the other end of this line.
There you go, yeah.
Don't jump his head.
Yeah.
Just so, And then I love it. Says, so what usually happens? The show doesn't come off very well. Huh. And so the other thing is, he begins to think life doesn't treat him right. There's that self-pity. Mm-hmm. He decides to exert himself more. There's the driven by the fear. He becomes on the next occasion still more demanding or gracious. There's that toolkit of self-will, as the case may be. Still the play doesn't suit him. Admitting he may be somewhat at fault, he is sure others are more to blame, right? Blaming others is as far as most of us ever got. And that's where I think the line, my part, came from, between that and to the man we hate, that we cleaned off our side of the street. I think people use those lines thinking that they did the right thing. But here's the problem. Sweeping off your side of the street is to the man we hate. That's not to your brother. Yeah. That's not to your boss. Well, you may hate your boss, but if you do, there's way more work to be done than just that. But people say, I did my part. Well, there's no my part. It's your faults and your mistakes, and it's my faults and my mistakes. Where did I set this ball rolling? Yeah. So, Charlie used to have a thing that Mark Houston said, and I just didn't agree with it. If I got 10% of the beef, I take 100% of my 10%. Well, just saying that makes me realize you need to take 100% of it, period. Because otherwise you're still expecting that person to apologize. Yeah. And the odds of that happening can be slim to nothing.
And also, for me, what I start seeing in my own experiences is like when I'm able to look at that person like a child of God, and there's not so much self in the lens of that. Like the reason I'm not able to do it is because it's just the way self is showing up, presenting itself in my life, right? It's like,
Absolutely.
You know?
Spot on. Yeah. As a matter of fact, I mean, everyone is a child of God, period. And I mean, sometimes you think they're, spawns of Satan, but they're a child of God. And the truth of the matter is I've got to get to that place
Amen.
to where if I'm going to apologize, I am not ever expecting them to say they're sorry.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, I'm looking for the freedom to just take responsibility for it.
Yeah,
I'm not taking responsibility for my part.
Amen. Yeah. I want him to be able to love that person through me, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yep. That's so then it says he becomes angry. There's column 2. Indignant. There's column 3. Self-pity. There's column 4. So, I mean, this paragraph shows us when it's on the what usually happens, right? Mm-hmm. And that whole thing is broken down to really give us preparing for inventory. And once again, boy, I had somebody a couple of days ago, mad as hell. Now, this got flung back on me too. So, mad as hell, a sponsee. And I said, did you write inventory on that? I mean, phone went dead silent. And I said, write the inventory and call me back. And I said, and I'd like for you to realize when you're that angry, you must put pen to paper. Must. If you don't understand how, call me. I can always help you. Sure. But you must put pen to paper. We're not going to talk yourself out of this resentment. Yeah. And a friend came in from San Francisco yesterday, and every time she comes into town, we try to, do a walk around Town Lake or something. And this time it was rainy weather, so she came over to have lunch in between her business meetings. And I was on a rant. Like I said, the last 3 weeks have been very challenging for me. Something took a left that I can't talk about, but it took a left. I got myself wrapped around the axle, and I had written a piece of inventory on it 3 weeks ago. Well, apparently it's still bothering me. And I just love her that she goes, have you written inventory on that? And I thought, the times changed, Katie. You need to write a piece of inventory on that young lady. And I mean to tell you, when she left, I was all over it. It was like, what in the, because Marty, I'll tell a sponsee something, then I'll take something to Marty, and Marty hands back to me what I just gave to the sponsee. I mean, that's the beauty of this thing. Yeah. Is I'm by no means, I may be a little farther down the road than somebody is with 4 years, but we still have to do the same process to get to the same place. Yeah. And so, I was so grateful. She said, have you written inventory? Because boy, did I need to hear that.
I got that from y'all. I'm sorry. I got that from you and Charlie, actually, when like I told you, I had 5 years sober or whatever. And like, I took that specifically. Anytime something's bothering me for over a day, if I'm waking up 2 days in a row and it's still bothering me, I'm putting pen to paper. And I do a nightly review for the most part every night. And there might be a night here and there that I miss or whatever. But yeah, I got that from y'all, and it's a game changer. There's something that happens.
It's a game changer.
Especially like whenever I got the inventory process from how I got from y'all was that shift that happens between 3 and 4, the column 3 and 4, which hasn't been
sick
my
man
experience.
Prayer.
Yeah. And there hasn't been that experience with every time I ever went through, with other ways that I went through the fourth step, But something about it is the game, it works,
Well, it's funny you say that because I am an inventory write full. Now, this other piece of inventory I'm talking about is much deeper, and Marty needs to have it. She needs to hear it because I'm just too blocked. I can't see anything. But if somebody bugs me, and I write inventory in my evening review or on awakening, I don't even have to get past the 3rd column. And I already see that I'm a hypocrite, right? Yeah. The sick man prayer is a hypocrite. They, like myself, are sick too. Help me show them the same patience, tolerance, pity I'd grant a sick friend, which would be me. Yeah. So to me, I love scribbling out inventory. I think a bunch of people really don't think they need to. And how do you know what you don't know, man? Amen. I'm a huge fan. And then there's also the big piece of this puzzle, which is high-end problems. I hope you have high-end problems. I hope the gifts of sobriety have brought you a lot of stuff, that you have a nicer house, that you have a newer car. And the high-end problems, a problem to an alcoholic is a problem. I don't care if the pool boy put too much chlorine in your pool. You don't go share that at the 24-hour club where they're really low bottom. But you dang sure call your sponsor before you take it out on the kid doing your pool and beat him within an inch of his life. I mean, to me, I remember somebody said a while back, "Wow, sounds like high end problems," and I remember thinking, I don't know why that bugs me. But that statement bugs me. Or they throw out, would you rather be right or happy? I'm like, oh, for heaven's sakes, you want me to work the promises and hope the steps come true?
Amen.
I mean, that is just such a backwards way of saying it. I know what their point is, but a philosophy like that does not work on me. It doesn't. It may work on others, but it does not work on me. And so, you got to know who you are when you're looking at these things. And, and then the book says, what's his basic trouble? That's a fair question. Is he really not a self-seeker even when trying to be kind? Bill's trying to get us to see that, when you're working an angle, when you're frustrated and you're trying to get your way. We all know that. But I don't know when I'm working an angle trying to be kind. That's the tricky one that'll sneak up on me. People call it the people pleaser. And really, it's the approval sucker.
Amen.
I mean, that's you're not trying to please anybody. I always like to say, let's bring all the people you pleased into the room here and see if that's their experience with you,
Yeah. So true.
Don't think that's going to be the case. And then, we get in. So the meat of this is the 2 paragraphs, selfishness and self-centeredness, that we think is the root of our trouble, right? The we is the first 100 who wrote the book. Yeah. Now, remember, I thought that meant stingy and conceited. And I was, of course, most likable 4 years in a row in high school. So clearly it didn't even apply to me. So, I'm telling you, I dismissed it immediately, never gave it another look, because I am not selfish and self-centered. And I had no idea. Once again, we hear words, we make a decision, and we think that that's the fact. Then it goes into saying I'm driven by 100 forms of fear. It could have said driven by 1,000 forms of fear. Then it says self-delusion, right? I go down 100 rabbit trails, deluding my mind with thoughts and ideas of what could happen. Then I go into self-seeking. I'm on a mission to figure it out. I am driven by these fears to go figure out, did so-and-so say this to such and such? Because if they did, then I'm in real trouble, because it's going to get back to Bob. And I'm going to be in trouble. I mean, it goes boom, boom, boom that fast. Wow. And you don't even know it's really happening. Then it says self-pity. I can't believe people, what do people think of me? I'm already down that dark road. And then it says, so once we're in this driven mode, somehow the word trigger has become a hot word in AA. I strongly discourage that word. Trigger is, it's as if you can control it. Amen. When it's a trigger, right? Oh, I know my triggers. I got to stay away from my triggers. Well, that's not the case. I understand what your theory is on that, but the word is driven. We are driven by 100 forms of fear, self-delusion, self-seeking, and self-pity, because the fallout is this. We step on the toes of our fellows and they retaliate. That's a problem, right? So all of a sudden, I am driven by something I see. Charlie knew that the things that drove me, and I knew the things that drove him, right? I could watch him across the room, and if somebody had too much bass in their voice, Charlie couldn't stand it, or a certain hat on. His head was going to blow off, and I would just watch him, and you could see it just coming out of his skin. But somebody so well. He knew what mine were, but I'm going to be generous to myself and not put them out there. So you're not going to know the ones that bug me. But we all have certain things that bother you, and when you catch me on the wrong day, and I'm just driven. Or if I have gossiped about somebody, and then all of a sudden somebody comes up and shares back my gossip that only came from me, oh boy, we got problems. We got problems, because now if they find out I was the one who started this, yada, 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 yada. Yeah. I mean, it's a vicious cycle to get in. And then it says, sometimes they hurt us, seemingly without provocation, or reason, right? But invariably, which means always. And here's the part, these are the things that I don't even realize what's going on. Sometimes they hurt us seemingly without provocation, but invariably we find that we made a decision based on self that later placed me in a position to be hurt. Now, I don't know what I try to do when I'm listening to inventory is I try to get you to walk the dog backwards till you see where that decision on self came, because it was fleeting. You don't see it until you it's like the crime scene. You got to run the tape backwards. We got to see where the blood splatter is. We got to figure out what happened here. And that's the exact same thing you have to do in inventory. And then once you see where you made that decision based on self, because you didn't even realize you did. But once you did, if that becomes objectionable behavior, then we have something to watch for in 10.
Yeah.
So see, people get very, very lost behind what, they see their glaring things in inventory, but you really have to get to the place that you're seeing the subtle decisions on self. When you looked across the room and you're in a relationship and there's a guy that you like and he turns and looks at you and you smile? Well, that smile's got a little more power in it than it should. Yeah. Right? Next thing you know, he's coming over to talk to you. So I'm going to walk the dog backwards till we find where you hit the smile. Let's see where you started this ball rolling. And now you're in a little bit of a pinch because now you flirted more than you should and you're in a dangerous area. Right? So that's kind of a lame example, but if I'm listening to inventory, I know what I'm looking for. And it's really amazing how you can figure it out. And then you give somebody some real objectionable behavior. Is that in your sane and sound ideal?
Amen.
Is that how you're looking? You're in a marriage that is committed. We don't get to get a lot of flirty stuff going on and still be okay with that. Now, it's a one-way street, right? I can flirt, but you can't. No. It's either we're all in. We're not playing this game. And then it says isn't not evident to all the rest of the players that these are the things he wants, and don't his actions make each of them wish to retaliate and snatch all they can on the show? This is a perfect example of a group conscience, right? Somebody's coming in with an agenda, and they're pushing their agenda, and the whole rest of the room sees it. Now, they don't think they see it. They think they're just pushing this agenda. And I could be the person in this play. Yeah. I could be the one manipulating the group conscience. I could be the one seeing somebody manipulated. So let's be very clear here. I'm not pointing fingers at anybody because I can do all of the above. and it's interesting because in the inventory process, this makes column 4 turn column 2 into a lie. Right? So I am pissed off at somebody, but I'm seeing that column 2 is not at all what happened, or that I've done the exact same thing to somebody else. Yeah. And I want justice for them, and I want freedom for me. I just want somebody to tell me I'm okay. Please don't point the finger at me. But when I see that I'm a hypocrite, I get instant freedom because I could just be either person in the play. Yeah. And then it says, is he not even in his best moments a producer of confusion rather than harmony? Right? Because now everybody's upset. I mean, gosh, I've done stuff for the whole family one time. It's been a long, long time. I can't remember the storyline, but I remember everybody was pissed off at me. And I thought this was supposed to have a completely different outcome. Everyone was supposed to say, "Oh, Mom, this is the greatest." And it didn't go well at all. Did not go well at all. I can't. The older I get, some of those become a blur. But I guarantee if my kids were sitting here, they go, "It was when we were in Florida." And thank you. I'm glad you have that memory. Because that's what children are for, to remember everything. And when they get old, their kids will remind them of all the stuff they did. Oh, man. Yeah. And then that's also where the amends comes into play, right? This producer of confusion rather than harmony. And, so really, I think what we have to ask ourselves is how does self show up for me when it causes me problems? I'm not really looking for all the great accolades I do. I mean, in my evening review, I am. But when I'm doing this inventory process, I'm looking for how does it show up? And if you're in a relationship with somebody, you should really be able to ask both people. Like if Charlie said, how does self show up for me? I could list 15 things in about a minute and a half and that Charlie couldn't see. But then I have to be respectful and say to Charlie, now list things that I do. And he always liked to play the game where he goes, "Oh, honey, you don't do anything." And I'm like, "Oh, come on, write them down. I know I do stuff." But Charlie was notorious for story stealing. His family was absolutely off the chain with it. I labeled it story stealing because what happened is Charlie would be standing there and somebody would come up and go, "Oh my God, you guys, I just got back from Switzerland." That was it. They were getting ready to tell their story of Switzerland. And Charlie goes, "Switzerland? I've been to Switzerland. I did this in Switzerland. And he tells the whole story, and you're standing there dumbfounded. And then he walks away.
Yeah.
And I look at the guy and I go, buddy, tell me what happened in Switzerland. I'm here for you. Not better than Charlie, but that's my boy does story stealing off the chain.
You
and
told me
I
about
mean,
this.
he was notorious for it. His whole family was notorious for it.
Yeah.
But it was, I guess nobody ever kind of just suggested to them that's worth looking at.
Hmm.
And so one time we were at a workshop and we talk about story stealing everywhere we are. And I said, what would be better is when somebody comes up to you and says something, when you realize they have got you to think about what you did, right? I went to Switzerland too. I can't wait to tell them after I hear their story. So you ask them 3 questions. And at the break, this guy comes running out with a pad and paper. He goes, what are these 3 questions? I looked down, I go, are you a big dodo? Depends on what the topic was.
Yeah.
What do you think? You got 3 pad questions?
Yeah, he thought he was
So
gonna
how many come up with a
children
children do you
magic
have?
answer.
Yeah. I swear to God. But then one of Charlie's sponsees said something so interesting. He said, because we were at a conference shortly thereafterwards doing a big book weekend in Toronto. And I told the story and only half the room laughed. And I thought, interesting. And so my buddy came up and he goes, the other half were wanting to know what the 3 questions were. So you see, it's an interesting exercise to go. So just listen to what the person says, and you're going to immediately think of something that you're going to relate it to you. And instead of stealing it, put that on the back burner for a minute and ask them some questions.
Yeah.
And then you go into, I have also gone to that same place. I know the restaurant you're talking about. It's so fabulous. And this is called the art of conversation.
Yeah, it's so funny. Hearing you talk about it on a talk, it's actually, I'm conscious of it sometimes now. That's funny because this past week, I can recall two different occasions where the first time I seen the opportunity to keep my mouth shut and I took it, right? And I listened and
good for you.
And then the second time I noticed that I was story stealing and kept doing it. It's just true. It's just true story. Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
Heightened awareness and did it anyway.
Yeah.
Well, you know what's so interesting about that though? That whole story stealing deal is so interesting because you can get to, when you understand the art of conversation, and I'm by no means perfect at it, but I do find it fascinating to ask people a lot of questions. I like to ask them a lot of questions because I can get a really quick bead on where we are, what we have in common, where we go with it, you know?
Yeah.
And that's kind of one of the things that Charlie was like, I watch my wife have conversations with people and she's just a listener. And only because in my family, we weren't big story stealers. We were yellers. Now, my family yelled. I mean, it's who could yell the loudest won. So Charlie's family was not yellers. So that does not go well in a marriage when one's a yeller and one's not. It was not good. Both yellers, I got no problem with that. Joe and I were yellers. But it's the art of conversation, and it's really fascinating to do that because now, keep in mind, you have to have a memory span to remember what you wanted to say.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's the other part. Charlie was always like, I'm going to forget.
Yeah, that's funny. I also feel like it's almost a form of service. It's like it's our very lives as ex-problem drinkers depend on our constant thought of others and how we may meet their needs. Sometimes I believe like it meets another person's needs to be, I heard Tom I once in a prayer, he said, help make me sensitive for little opportunities to be of service. And that's part of that for me,
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, see, and that line stepped out to you, and I've heard Tom 100 times, and I couldn't tell you that I heard that one.
Yeah.
And I'm sure he said it. And so, see, I think God is so good at waking us up to so many things to hear that can change the course of our lives.
So crazy.
I mean, change the course of our lives. Yeah, what we have in Alcoholics Anonymous, I don't think anybody anywhere in the world has what we have.
I know.
We are so blessed and
Amen.
so fortunate to have this gift. It's never lost on me. Well, for many years it was until I woke up. And then once I woke up, it was just not lost on me. But I think there's, you have to ask yourself how self shows up for you. Yeah. Some people do a lot of self-talk, right? I know I can walk in the room. I know I'm this. I know I'm that. Or that can be really negative. I'm never going to get that. And this is always going to be this way. And, you got to know what what you're doing that's standing in the way
Yep.
of your life. And oh my gosh, the way we read storylines, I got 100 stories, but right now I'm just going to be respectful and move on. But so many stories that I don't even realize how self has consumed me. And then all of a sudden I see it. It's like, oh my. Okay. Yeah, they're not all really enthusiastic that Katie's entered their world. They need to go home. They want to lock the building, and we need her to get out of here. Her stories are not fascinating.
I like them.
But
I like them. I'm just saying,
okay.
I like them.
Thank you.
Yeah. I like
Well,
them.
and here's the other piece is I can see it in others, but I'm blind to it in me. Right? I mean, we'll be talking to somebody or somebody in a meeting is sharing. You're like, oh boy, here we go.
Yeah.
Here it goes.
Yeah.
But when I share, my stuff's stellar. I'm just stellar. I mean, it's so funny how quick we are to judge. And we might do the exact same thing, and I don't see any fault in it whatsoever because I do it different. I do it better. I do it this. I do it, whatever the case may be. Yeah. And there's another thing that I'm a little bit of a stickler on. Everybody's got their little sticklers of how, Charlie hated the chanting. And I'm a stickler on words. If you use words that are not in our literature, we are treating alcoholism. This is a fatal illness. You'll wish you were dead long before you were. That's the part of fatality. And the problem with that is when we come in with these new words, trigger, gaslighting. Oh my gosh, don't even get me started on that term. I grew up with that movie, and that had serious mental illness and all sorts of stuff, but they use gaslighting, they use trigger, and I say these are people I have sponsored, and they've used these terms, and I just gently tell them that our book doesn't have those words. Yeah. We need to be using codependent, right? Manipulative and controlling, expectations, belief systems, right? So codependent is the actor running the whole show, right? If everyone would do as I wish. See, I'm so dependent on you doing what I want you to do. Manipulative and controlling is a self-seeker. Expectations are my ambitions. And belief systems are my old ideas, my prejudice, and my values. Yeah. That's what the book is using. So it's very important that it's just small, minor adjustments. And there's always going to be in the know catchphrases. Remember in the 80s, it was the inner child. Your inner child. Well, you know what your inner child is in our big book? Is your old ideas. It's all your old ideas. It's what formed you as to who you are. Now, it's a bit of a broader brush, and I got no problem if you want to go into counseling and they want to use the term inner child, rock on. But when I'm passing it on to another alcoholic, I've got to use the words that treat alcoholism. Otherwise, I think I got something other than that. And then our book goes into such a beautiful piece where it says, so our troubles are basically of our own making. They arise out of ourself, and the alcoholic is an extreme example of self-will run riot, though he usually doesn't think so. That is a game changer. That is a game stopper. I mean, all of a sudden you're hearing it thinking, well, I am not an extreme example. And then they go, no, he usually doesn't think so. Well, they gave me the old 1-2 punch on that one, didn't they? Because I tell you, I remember reading that, and I thought, that is not me. That is Charlie Parker. Charlie Parker is self-centered, and he is absolutely self-will run riot. He does whatever he wants to do. He doesn't ever pay attention to me. I mean, I had the entire package set up. It was Charlie was the problem, and in everything. And I mean, come on. And when you're in a marriage, it's very easy to blame your significant other. Now, you do it quietly and internally. Yeah. But you're just like, oh, rolling your eyes. Oh, can you believe it? And I'll tell you, it's so funny. I used to blame somebody for taking my toothbrush. Now I am completely by myself, and I'm walking around going, who took my toothbrush? Oh, I'm by myself. Okay. I guess that might be me. That's going to be my problem. Nobody's taking my toothbrush. Yeah. I'm just putting it somewhere thinking somebody else took the darn thing.
Yeah.
So it's funny how we get into the parts of understanding the third step, and it's like cracking an egg. I mean, all of a sudden it just runs into everything. You just have everything. And then it says they arise out of ourself, and the alcoholics, that extreme example is self-will run riot. Above everything, we must be rid of this self. We must, or it kills us. God makes that possible. There often seems no way of entirely getting rid of self without his aid. So we can't think ourselves into right action. We can't do any of that. We can try on certain things. Like I can get in the car and I'm already agitated and I can take a moment to say, I'm going to be in traffic. God, please let me be at peace and ease. But if I get in the car and think I can think my way into that, I'm going to probably be frustrated. Things are not going to go so well. And the book says many of us had moral and philosophical convictions galore, right? I'm telling you, I'll tell these quick 2 stories. I was spanked as a kid. Oh my God, you're raised by World War II vets. That was just normal. It wasn't abuse, at least in my home. It was not abuse. It was spanking on the butt. That was it. And, but never was I slapped in the face. And I slapped both my children, both times in untreated alcoholism when they were both teenagers. My kids are 10 years apart. So I was devastated when I slapped April at 12. And then I was shocked when I slapped Sam at 13. So that was about 10 years apart. And I remember almost like being in a blackout when I did it. I just couldn't believe it. And when I made the amends to my children, my daughter said, "Oh, Mom, that didn't even make the top 10." I'm like, what? Because I was devastated. That's the other funny thing about the amends process.
Yeah.
You're devastated over some of your actions, and your kid was like, "That's not even in the top 10." I'm like, what was in the, when she started rattling them off, I thought, oh, for God's sake, those were ridiculous. But it's what you see,
Yeah.
And then Charlie and I tried to, I looked like I wasn't going to get Joe's life insurance, and that's a whole story in itself, but we were going to bribe a doctor in double-digit sobriety. Yeah.
That's funny.
Now, if people are going to get real, I think they got stories kind of like that.
Sure.
I really do. If you're an alcoholic that's a mover and a shaker, oh yeah, there's some, and I'll leave it at that. I won't mention the doctor. I won't mention the area or anything. But we were going to do that, and everything worked out fine. And Charlie liked to say we were watching a lot of The Sopranos back then. So he was acting like.
That's funny.
What was the guy on The Sopranos' name?
Tony Soprano.
Tony, yeah, Tony.
Yeah.
He thought he was Tony.
Yeah.
And then it says, neither could we reduce our self-centeredness much by working on it ourselves. That's the key. We can't just slap our forehead and go, by golly, I need to be less self-centered.
Yeah.
It doesn't work that way. We cannot work on our character defects.
Yeah.
I need to be awake and aware to them and ask God for the help.
And if you're doing
I cannot
enough,
fix self with self.
That's it. And if you're doing enough like nightly reviews, it's so obvious. Like all you got to do is do it for a day or two and be honest about it. And it's like, holy crap! Like it's all over.
Absolutely.
Stop. Right.
It's absolutely the fact about that. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah.
And self-knowledge or awareness is important to see what's driving us, right?
Yeah.
Our values, our old ideas are all in the third column.
Yeah.
Columns 1, 2, and 3 are still all about me. So when you get to that fourth column, everything starts changing. But I need to understand what my old ideas are, what my values are, and what's driving me.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I go into self-reliance and I try to fix it. There's no God at all. Yeah. And here's the beautiful part. So we have to have God's help. Now that's the end of what do we mean. And now we go into what do we do, right? So this is the what do we do part of it. Remember on page 60, it said just what do we mean and what do we do? Mm-hmm. Now we're in the what do we do.
Okay.
So this is the how and why of it, right?
Okay.
And first of all, we have to quit playing God. Why? Well, it just didn't work. And that means I need to know everything. That's what I think. I need to understand the circumstance. I need to know what's going on. Think, here you are, you're in a airport, and the line is pretty long, but it seems like there's a little congestion up at the front of the line. Well, I'm going to have to walk up there and find out what's going on. I cannot be a people amongst people in the line. I have to get the information and relay it to all the people in the line what the problem is up there. And I'm fascinated by people. It just happened when I was applying to New Jersey. It's like, what is this line? And Charlie goes, my wife, brake lights and lines. She squirts out. She's out. I'm out of the line. I can't do it. It's like somebody put me in cellophane, and once I go up there and I see, and it passes through the eye of my needle is acceptable, then I walk back casually. If it passes through does not, I'm telling everybody in the line, you are not going to believe what's happening down there.
Oh, that's funny.
Injustice. It's so fun. And that was freaking last week,
Yeah.
But it's observing myself. And then I was not doing well in that airport. Everything about that flight fell apart. And I was trying to zip a bag. And I don't like to be the girl that has to mess with any of my stuff before I get on the plane. And this man saw me having trouble. He was so kind. And he put his hand on my shoulder. And he goes, would you like me to help you with that? And I looked at him. I'm ready to cry. And I said, I'm not doing well at all. And he goes, I can tell. So he helped zip it. And I just put my head right on his shoulder. I went, thank you so much. I needed somebody to just give me a hand. Because I'm traveling without Charlie. Now, I'm going to have to get used to that. I'm going to have to grow up. But let me tell you, traveling with Charlie, now he was always so frustrated at how many bags I carry. I do carry a lot of bags. And I do. I got many, many bags. And before we get on the plane, they got to be pushed into 2 so I can get past the check. And then I pull my 4 bags out. But this guy picked up on my energy, and he was so god dang sweet. It was just, he just had the patience of Job. And I'd recognize him if I saw him somewhere, but it was just a moment where I thought, thank you so much. So that, it says, first of all, why it didn't work, it's because I need to know everything. I have to have everybody's got to keep me in the loop. Next, we decided, now here's the decision. The prayer is the reiteration of the decision. God was going to be our director. He's the principal. We're his agents, right? Agent means to empower, to act on his behalf. So I believe we are agents in Alcoholics Anonymous to help the still suffering alcoholic. I believe that is our job description. I love Dr. Bob says, first reason, it's our duty. We are given back to what has been given so freely to us. But I really think we are to act on God's behalf. Now, I'm not playing God. I'm acting. I see a guy walk into an AA meeting, and I clearly tell he's by himself. He doesn't know anybody. I'll beeline it over there. We used to do that in the 80s all the time. Well, if you don't think that's not happening today, go to a meeting somewhere that you're not going to know anybody.
Yeah.
Go, if you're in a town, go 45 minutes away to a meeting. Nobody knows you. And stand there and see how long it takes somebody to come up and introduce themselves to you.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate, but the art of communication is being lost, and I will not go down that road because I'm very, very disappointed in our society and these cell phones. We're just losing the art of seeing somebody and doing something. And because we're too busy either in conversations or looking at our phone, right? And when it says that we're empowered to act on his behalf, that's a message of depth and weight armed with the facts about ourselves. All the way from 0 to 17 years, I did not have that. Now, I helped people, but I didn't help people based on what the book is saying today. And I went back to a lot of those people when I woke up, and I was going to tell them, I'm sorry, I was not giving you AA. And 3 of the 6 that I was going back to said, Katie, you helped me so much. And I realized that I didn't need to go back and say that to them. It was almost like me falling on my own sword. They whatever I did helped them at the time. And I'm thinking, but I didn't give you AA. I didn't need to. At the time, I gave them what I could give them. And God takes up so much slack. I don't ever want to say AA's doing it wrong. This is, I was in that world for years before I woke up, and God used me as an instrument to wake other people up. And some people wake up with the message I carry and some don't. And that's totally fine. Let's part as friends. Let's shake hands. If it doesn't float your boat, well, that's totally fine. There's spiritual teachers out there that don't float my boat. And, but they float somebody else. So, that's the beauty of all of this.
Amen.
And then it says, when we sincerely took such a position, what position was that? That we were going to quit playing God. All sorts of remarkable things followed, right? And remember on page 46, it says God does not make too hard of terms for those who seek him. That the terms are, I've got to stay close to him. That God, this is where my quoting has gotten weak. It says, being all powerful, he provided what we needed if we keep close to him and perform his work well. That's the terms on page 46. Well, being all powerful, he provided what I needed. If I keep close to him, I can't keep close to him till I get close to him. And I can't get close to him till I get unblocked. So that is why the process of inventory, you cannot have a heart full of fear and resentment and think you're going to get close to the creator. You might hear a voice or two, but you have to do the process of stripping away the darkness. It's required. And then I love what it says here. It says, as we felt new power flow in, as we enjoyed peace of mind. Fair question to ask yourself. Do you have peace of mind? And if you really answer sincerely, some may say yes, some may say no. And I'm always so concerned about technology today. I think there's games, there's binge watching TV, there's Facebook. I think Facebook can kind of be peeking into other people's lives. All of a sudden somebody had a party, they didn't invite you. I mean, inventory on Facebook. I tell people, get rid of Facebook. Well, I don't want to. Okay, well then figure out how to deal with other people's opinions. I mean, you don't have to have Facebook. You don't have to track your children's whereabouts. I mean, there's a lot of things you don't have to do FaceTime. You can just use the phone as a regular phone.
Yeah.
And that's what I think. I think people, because it's new and cool, they do it. And everything comes with some ramifications. It's just the nature of life. There's always going to be the good and the bad and the ugly, right? And so you got to float with that. And, as we discovered we could face life successfully, right? Turn statements into questions. As we became conscious of his presence, we begin to lose our fear of today, tomorrow, and the hereafter. We were reborn. And I'm telling you what, that is exactly what happens in that third step. There is a rebirth that's getting ready to take place if we follow it with the action that is required. We must take the action. If we don't take the action, we don't get the gift. It's kind of like Bob Bazans used to say, it's like giving a present to you and you just put it on the ground and kick it everywhere you go. You never unwrap it. You just kick the present into one room and kick the present into another room, and you don't look what's in the present in the gift.
Wow.
And it's a doggone good one. You're going to grow to love who you are. You're going to be proud of who you are. You're going to be able to help people. And that's just the beauty of recovery. It's a gift. People, well, I don't have a good message. Yes, you do. Step out there and stumble a little bit. You'll straighten that up.
Yeah.
Mark used to say, God puts the ego to work for the good.
Yeah.
Go try to help somebody. And you may not do it for yourself, but you'll do it for someone else.
Yeah.
And I think that to me is just the beauty of the third step.
Yeah. It was something you said last week and this week actually that really stood out. Which is funny because I guess I kind of knew this, but I didn't know that I knew it. But it was he said one of the lucky ones. I was one of those guys too that like pretty much when I walked into the door, I just enjoyed it. I had no clue what was going on, but I just enjoyed it. And that's not everyone's experience,
Oh, it's very few. You would be. I started doing it, taking a poll, and I still take a poll. In New Jersey, there was 300 or 500, I don't know, Chad said 500, it looked like 300 to me, people in the room, and about 15 raised their hand when I said, how many of you guys on day one, I'm not talking day 15, I'm talking day one, loved AA. Yeah. And the reason that has been such a big deal is Charlie and I remember where we were sitting when Bob Bazan said he's one of the lucky ones. Now, he says that all the time. It's not the first time he's ever said it, but Charlie leaned over and said, what does he mean he's one of the lucky ones? And I said, I think he's saying that he loved AA on day one. I said, but didn't we all?
Yeah.
And oh my gosh, what a shock. Now, I'll tell you, there's an edge on that too, because I thought that everybody loved AA on day one. Yeah. So I thought you had time when you came in to kind of screw around and not necessarily work the steps right away and, buy a little bit of time. And today I find out that, man, there's some guys that don't have 24 hours. Yeah. They can't stand being in their own skin. And they don't like us. It's not that they don't like the people in the room. They don't want to do do what's required. And they didn't walk in going, man, this is so cool. They're like, what a bunch of losers,
Sure, yeah.
And I mean, when people to really tell you, because if you think we're a bunch of losers, please say it. I know where you stand.
Yeah.
I know how to handle you.
Yeah.
You get to think and see and do whatever you want here, and I'll work with that. But if you keep that to yourself and fake it and act like you're something that you're not, well, we probably got a problem.
It's funny too, because looking back over it, like when I first started sponsoring guys, it could have been a situation, or probably was a situation where it was, they did not fall in love with this thing like I did the second I walked in, and like I would just chalk it off to like, oh, they just wasn't willing, or they wasn't this. But I'm trying to babysit this guy. You know what I mean? It's like,
sure. Oh, I do know.
So important to get into this work.
And it's so interesting because, it's really, and I've got strong opinions. God almighty, I got strong opinions. And I really would like to think that everybody in AA has strong opinions. Maybe they have a little bit more ability to not share them like I do. But there's some folks, like to take people through the book line by line, the new guy. And I'm sorry, I just don't think that's a safe way to do it.
Yeah.
I think they don't have the time to sit down and do that. I mean, they are really struggling. And because they're struggling, I think that, it's better to do a fast first step, explain alcoholism, physical allergy, mental obsession. Just ask them, how do you feel about a power greater than yourself? We don't have to spend much time on it because it's going to be tame to believe. And then, break down the third step and then have them write an inventory in 2 days. And I'm a fan of writing five inventory, 5 resentments, 5 fears, and 5 harms. And let's take you through those, because you can do that in a 4-hour period of listening to inventory. If you write down 27 resentments, it's going to take forever.
Yeah.
And to me, let's take the top 5. I used to do 10, but I find that 5 is more doable. And then once you take that through 9, then you come back and you bring me another 5 or another 10. And, we're not in 3 months, we're going to have gone through about 35 resentments. So, I always tell people, if that doesn't sound good to you, try it, have the experience, and then tell me what you think.
Yeah.
That's the beauty of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I'd recently stopped going word for word with guys. I started seeing how important it was through experience, realizing like, man, we don't even have time for this. That's so important.
You bet.
And there's a guy
and
right
I think
now,
there is a time for it, but it's not when they're brand new.
Yeah, there's a guy right now that had just come back, that I've known this guy since I got sober, and he just come back, and it's like, it makes all the sense in the world. It's like, he's having a pretty rough time. It's like, look, man, let's just get into this, Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah. This has been great.
Yeah, well, it really is. And everybody's a little bit different. You got to trust that God's going to give you the nudge of what should be done and what shouldn't be done. And, just working with that. Well, I got to tell you, Paul, my voice did pretty good. I'm very excited. I was scared to death that breaking up those dogs this morning had just toasted me for a long weekend of talking. And I thought, I even considered calling you and going, oh, buddy, can we put this off just so I can not talk for 2 days and let my voice rest? But it made it through. So I'm very grateful, and I'm glad that we did it.
Yeah, this has been great. Thank you so much. And like what the cool part about the podcast too, when we first originally talked about this, was we have the freedom to, we can pause if we need, if we got family stuff or group stuff going on or whatever, we come back and do it on a different date. So that's cool. And for those that are listening, speaking of, we're going to be skipping the next 2 weeks. And then we were coming back on March 5th for step 4. And I'm super excited about that. Really super excited. Thank you, Katie.
Yeah, it'll be great. I can't wait. I look forward to it. So we'll stay in touch about that next one that we're going to do.
Okay. Yes, ma'am. And
you and I.
Okay, yeah. And I appreciate everything. And I hope you have a good time this weekend. And
we're going to have a ball. As a matter of fact, Chad just called me. So we're going to finally go over what we're going to do. And, try to just kind of get our ducks in a row. So
nice.
It's all good.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for listening.
Care.
Thank you. Have a good one.
Hello, thank you for listening to 3 Legacies Recovery Recordings. If you enjoy our program, please be sure to like and subscribe to the channel, and don't forget to share with a friend. We're also self-supporting, so feel free to contribute to the channel through Venmo at Recovery Recordings 615. Please note that the views expressed on this podcast are solely our individual views and do not represent any official stance of any 12-step program. We are not affiliated with any specific recovery organization, and this content should not be considered as professional advice for alcoholism or addiction.